I'm going to talk about evolution and how it pertains to the history of psychology. More specifically, I'm going to talk about the shift from the static paradigm of species, or fixed, to the dynamic one of evolution. And so one of the very first people to propose any sort of evolution-related mechanism was Erasmus Darwin, Charles Darwin's grandfather, and he said that all species had come from shells. And he was not quite taken as seriously as Darwin by the scientific community. Another scientist who proposed an evolutionary mechanism was Lamarck, and he proposed the theory of inheritance of acquired characteristics. And so an example of this would be if a giraffe stretched its neck, it would then get longer, and then it would inherit this trait down to its offspring. And of course, it does not quite work like this. You can go to the gym and work out your muscles, but you're not gonna give birth to a ripped baby. And so a lot of these mechanisms were false, and it's easy to laugh at. But I think this really is actually a point that illustrates how important it is to look at the history, because he's not completely wrong. So recently, a really hot area of research is epigenetics, which is when gene expression is modified, and some studies have found this to be hereditary. So maybe stretching the neck isn't going to be passed down, but maybe it is causing some sort of gene methylation that is going to be passed down. And so I just think this illustrates how important it is not just to look back and laugh at people's ideas, because there's usually some truth to them, even if their mechanism seems absurd. And another person who contributed to evolution was Spencer, and he contributed by applying evolutionary mechanisms to society and the human mind. And so he came up with social Darwinism, or that we should not help people so that the human race will improve. And I think a fallacy of people thinking this way is that they think that evolution has a purpose, and it doesn't. So an analogy I like to use is if you're being chased by a bear, you don't need to outrun the bear, you only need to outrun yourself. Your friend, not yourself. But so you only need to outrun your friend and not the bear. And so this just illustrates how evolution is an imperfect process. It doesn't have a goal. And so I think that's a fallacy of people arguing for social Darwinism and using it as an excuse not to help people in need. And so this is called social Darwinism, but it was just named later because Darwin didn't come up with this, Spencer did. And so Darwin was a young adult when he's on the HMS Beagle, where he made a lot of his discoveries, and he later wrote about them in The Origin of Species. And he had other impacts other than just evolution, so he actually also illustrated the importance of animals in psychology and comparing that to humans. But his main contribution he's remembered for is evolution, and he had three steps to it. So the first is variation. So going back to the giraffe example, this would be that some giraffes have short necks where others have longer necks. And then hereditary is that these traits can be passed down. So a giraffe with a long neck is more likely to give birth to a giraffe with a long neck. And then natural selection is when the giraffes with the long neck might have a better chance of living because they can reach the taller branches, and so they're the ones who pass on their genes rather than the ones with the short necks. And so that sums up evolution and Darwin's theory that's still used today, and there's more added onto it, like the epigenetics I talked about, and it's just a really interesting area of research, and I think it's important to learn about the history of it. So I was really happy to give my video on this topic.